Next up, though, we got another Meet the Team. This week we have Jordana, another amazing member of Team Mack. If you want to take a look here.
Hell yeah. Shout out to Jordana. She does a lot of things on the team. I think she's going to tell you a little bit about what she does, but she's been working here for a few years. We love having her. Yeah, let's hear what she has to say.
Hi, my name is Jordana. I have worked on Team Mac for about 3 years. I'm on the social media team, but I also do all kinds of things related to the written word. So I write copy, I transcribe every video, including the Flow State podcast, which means I'm going to be transcribing my own words here in a few weeks, which is a little bit weird. And I do all the show notes. So I do a lot of research, make sure that we have all those sources cited. So if you guys want to dive deeper into things, you have access, and a bunch of other stuff. So my question for Harry, hi Harry, hi Sam, is about perfectionism. How do you deal with perfectionism? As an artist, a photographer, a writer, visual arts, I have the luxury of limitless iterations, right? So I can take thousands of photos and be very selective in what I'm putting out into the world. I can edit, I can adjust, I can crop, I can do everything that I want to do to feel good about what I'm putting out there. That is less possible when you have an improvisational art like what you do, Harry. So knowing that, yes, to some extent, we are selective about what goes out there, but we still put stuff out where Harry flubs a line, or maybe Harry mispronounces a word, or maybe a rhyme doesn't land the way that Harry, you would want it to. So my question is, what is that threshold for you? And how do you deal with that sense of perfectionism so that you can feel okay putting something out there in the world and know that it's not perfect, that it's human, but it still demonstrates your talent? And how do you feel okay with that and not get like kind of an icky vibe of knowing, well, I didn't 100% nail it, and yet thousands, millions, whatever of eyes are going to be on this clip. So if you could talk to that and perfectionism and like fighting that battle with yourself a little bit, I would love to hear the details. All right. Thanks, guys.
Hell yeah. Awesome question from Jordana. Well, first and foremost, do not think about the thousands and potentially millions of eyes that might be seeing the clip. That's the worst thing to do. No, this is an awesome question. So I think that my goal for my freestyles is for them to be perfectly imperfect, right? So I think that what is beautiful about the improvisational arts like jazz and freestyling, improv comedy, I'm sure, and whatever other improvisational forms exist out there. What are the others, by the way? Let me know in the comments. I guess like live painting is a thing. But what are all the forms of improvisation? I would love to know. I've never actually thought about that. But just sticking to improvised music, let's say, the thing that makes it so beautiful is that all of the humanity is in it, like all of the flawed humanity, we all have flaws, and that's what makes us beautiful, And so like within a jazz solo, for example, like there's this rawness, like there will be these notes that come out like with a little edge to them or a little harshness to them, or not quite as clean as the other notes, not quite as beautiful. The same way that some days we show up with a little roughness around the edges and we're kind of just struggling through it, and it's not quite as clean as we would hope that it is every single day, right? Because we're imperfect and we're just trying to figure it out as we flow through life. And I think that that's what's unique about improvised music and art, and what makes improvisation so powerful is that it just shows that in the offering, in the artistic offering. It doesn't try to hide it. It doesn't try to revise and perfect and iterate to get just the right thing, which is another way of achieving immense beauty, by the way. So it's not one or the other, right? It's both. And really, it's probably a spectrum, and all art falls somewhere on that spectrum. And by no means am I trying to say that improvised art is superior because it shows the humanity. But that is what makes improvisation really unique and beautiful to me. And I think that's one of the things that appeals to me the most about being an improviser and also listening to great improvisers. And like one of my favorite things is like, in a jazz recording or like if you're watching a video of like a jazz concert on YouTube or something, and it's like drum solo, you know, like around some hits, you know, you know, and the drummer starts slow and then he starts building up. And then at some point through it, it's like he's going for something that's like slightly out of reach, maybe, you know, he's going for that. He's like taking that risk, you know, he's, I guess, somewhere in his brain doing that fear assessment we were talking about before, but it's just happening within milliseconds and he or she is not necessarily even conscious of it, but they decide in the moment to go for this thing because it came to them and it's like, man, maybe this is a little outside of what my hands can actually do, but like, fuck it, man, here we go. You know, I'm feeling it, and they go for it and it doesn't quite come out, and you hear the roughness and the rawness and the slight, like, oh, the equivalent of me flubbing a word when I do a freestyle, right? And then you hear the drummer go like, ah, and then back into it, and they all land together, right? And you hear that like vocalization of like the frustration in real time. And then what's so crazy is so often when you hear those vocalizations of like the frustration, that's the exact moment right afterwards where someone in the audience yells, go, man, go, go, you know? And you get that like, woo, let's go, baby, talk, you know? It's when that happens. Like, how fascinating is that? Why is it that when the person is going for something slightly out of reach, struggling a little bit, and then making that into something beautiful in real time, that's the moment that the audience is moved the most so often, right? And I think it's because, wow, that's the humanity on display. You're not just showing us a perfect thing that you perfected in a laboratory and now you're rolling it out and you're confident to roll it out because it's perfect and because there's nothing that can be said about it that you haven't already thought about. You're just bearing your soul live. And I think when we realize that that's what's happening, it's so meaningful. And it's just like, wow, you're a human too? Damn, that's crazy because I'm a human. You struggle and have to work it out, and it's not always perfect. I struggle and have to work it out, and it's not always perfect. Damn, it feels like a hug, you know? It's like from the stage to the audience, it's like a big hug. And I think that's all that we want, is to be seen and heard. You know, we're just stuck inside our brains. Like, it's that philosophical thing. Like, am I even a human or am I just a brain in a vat? How would I know? Like, I can't see through your eyes, you know? I can't, like, is green the same to me as it is to you? You know? And it's not for everybody because people have different versions of color blindness that rearrange the colors or remove certain colors. You know, so it's like, does hot feel the same to you as me? Like, we don't ever know. Like, so it can feel isolating. And so I feel like that's one of the main purposes of art, is to communicate and to say like, hey, here's how it feels for me. Do you think it might feel similar for you? It's really beautiful, you know? And so that's why I am okay with, even though I am a perfectionist, I have to essentially accept that, there's going to be little flaws and flubs in some of the freestyles that I show. But, you know, that's okay because they're perfectly imperfect and they're just human. And the other thing I would say, too, about this is that, my perfectionism made it impossible for me to be an artist for a big chunk of my life, you know? I mean, I was an artist in a sense, but I wasn't really putting myself out there like I am now and really going all in terms of, like, making this my life, because I was too much of a perfectionist to share anything, you know, and I've spoken about that a little bit. That's some of what my song Fuck This Fear is about, you know, scared to put a song out. I mean, that was me for just so long. And, you know, like Jordana, you talk about having the luxury to go in and to make, to pick the best pieces and to make adjustments and to get everything ready to share. And that's beautiful for you, you know, and so many artists are able to create such beautiful things that I'm so grateful to have through that very process that you describe as a luxury. But for me, it wasn't a luxury so much as a curse, because to me, having infinite time to figure out how to perfect something before I share it, my perfectionism was such that it was never going to pass that threshold, and therefore I was never going to share anything. And that's essentially what happened for at least a decade, you know, where I just didn't share anything really. Or if I shared it, I didn't try to promote it. I didn't really even want people to hear it. And so for me, funny enough, the way to solve it was to just say, well, let's just remove the iteration and the revision and the perfection. Let's just remove all of that, and I'll just do it live, and it'll be done. And when I'm done doing the live thing, that is the offering. And whether you just witnessed me do it and it was for the moment, and then the words just dissipated into the universe, never to be heard again, cool. Or if we filmed it and now we're showing it to a larger audience through YouTube and social media, that's also great. But I had to embrace the imperfection of improvisation if I ever wanted to share my message with the world and share my heart with the world. And everybody's different, and I feel like the artist's process really needs to reflect the artist themselves, and so that can be hard, because there are sort of pre-established norms and so-called conventional ways of doing things. And I've gone through my struggles with like trying to mold myself to fit, the conventional model of the time in terms of how to be a musician, how to be an artist, and how to get your music out, and, so on and so forth. And it's always very painful, when I'm trying to mold myself to do that. And so, I just have to be comfortable with who I am. And it's very freeing to just say, hey, this is how I like to create. I like to do it all in real time. Keep the mistakes in there. Some of my favorite freestyles from other people, if it's like there's little hiccups in it, not anything crazy, but there's little stuff in it to just remind you like, yo, this is really being improvised. This is really happening live. So yeah, this is such a good question. I feel like I could do a whole episode on this because there's one more thing I want to say about this, which is that I, coming from the jazz world, I have always really enjoyed the process of applying my perfectionism in the practice room and then letting go on the stage. So that's how it works for me, as opposed to like a more traditional music artist who applies their perfectionism in the studio to their offering and then shares that as an album. That's great. Again, like some of my favorite albums are made via processes like that. Most of them, right? Most people are perfecting the record and then sharing it, and it's great. But for me, I've always just enjoyed the jazz approach of like, be a perfectionist in the practice room. Be a perfectionist at like mastering this language, master this craft of this instrument, and master this improvisational language so you can speak it with a really high level of fluency. And then just know that that's there serving you. And when you get out on stage, let go of all of it and just open up your heart and just bear your humanity for everybody to see. And over the years, that perfectionism in the practice room just continually elevates the level that you're able to do it on stages. And I love that way of working. That to me makes so much sense. That's so enjoyable. But the sitting there with a song, listening back to it 1,000 times, being like, damn, should I turn the vocals up 1 dB? Damn, should I change this line? Damn, should I EQ it differently? That I do not enjoy at all. So even talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, I don't like doing that. So.
Paralyzing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, man. I think a lot of that risk is like the allure. So like when you're talking about like, why is that moment in jazz? It's always kind of that gets the audience going.
Yeah.
It's almost like that we can all relate to pushing yourself into something like unknown, and it's kind of scary. So it's almost like when someone does that, or like, let's say like a skier, like or athletes competing on something that's like pushing beyond their talent or whatever.
Yeah.
It's almost like a human shared win.
Yes.
Where like you're doing that, and I don't know if I would ever like, push myself like that, but I would hope so. And like, that's kind of, it's just such a thing to witness every time.
Yes. 100% agree.
I love it.
Awesome question from Jordana. She is just a wonderful human being all around and such an asset to our team. We're so grateful to have her. She is so good at so many things outside of her work on Team Mack. She's also an incredible photographer and writer. She has published books in the world that you need to check out. So make sure you go support everything she's doing. You will not regret it. Instagram at Jordana Wright. We'll have that in the show notes, WRIGHT or JordanaWright.com. Please go check her out. As you can see from this video, she is surrounded by some of the most beautiful nature in the world, and she does an amazing job documenting it. So make sure you go get hip. Thank you, Jordana.
Yeah, she's got some really dope photography on both the website and IG. Check it out. Very talented.